Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by TIE Software, the battle station for freight brokers. Your TMS should be viewed as a tool to help you execute at a high level in any freight market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform that has rate intelligence and quoting history converged down to a single screen. TIE also equips your team with all the data they need to confidently negotiate pricing while also allowing them to communicate directly with both carriers and customers from a single command center. With most of your tasks automated through multiple integrations, your team can focus on making strategic decisions and not manual ones. Are you looking to revolutionize your brokerage by giving them a competitive advantage through automation? Visit www.tiesoftware.com/battlestation to learn more. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say this before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Today, you guys, we're going to be talking about equipment financing and everything going into 2025, kind of recapping in 2024 as well with this, and like really what can you do to be better prepared out there. So, I always love to talk about every side of the industry, and this one in particular, is always good for my driver friends who are out there, small fleets and fleets that watch this show. To kind of see like how can we be better prepared for it going in. And when I say I only talk to real transportation professionals, we're kind of it's the epitome of that today, because my man and my guest James Currier is literally out on the road right now wrapping up the year. So James, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Coach, and looking forward to the next half hour.
No, me too, man. Like I love it, and I always love the fact that like you're literally pulled over and got inside of the coffee shop. We were talking before we went live that a couple months ago, like I was out on the road out in Florida, and I had to like pull over into a Walmart parking lot and do my show from the front seat of my rental car because like I couldn't get a late checkout at the hotel. And the show must go on, as Barnum and Bailey or one of those guys said back in the day.
You know what? It's the life of a traveling salesman and the chief window washer at Finloc. And sometimes you have to do what you can.
Dude, I'm right there with you, man. But like honestly though, it's funny is the amount of people that I've heard from over the years that are like, how do I get started? What do I do? And I'm like, you just gotta start and go. Like nobody actually cares about the setting per se, like whether you're in a coffee shop or it's about the content. They're not going to remember that. It's more about like the information that you're putting out there.
You know what? My mentality as far as work goes has never changed from day one. From the day I got into sales and equipment finance 13 or however many years ago, it's been the same, and it's just about getting out and seeing people face to face, looking in the whites of their eyes, and making sure they know who I am and I know who they are. I want to be able to shake their hands and see their operations and get to know the folks who are actually driving the business.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. And I think like that is going to be the biggest separator as automation and AI cold calling, all of that stuff becomes more and more prevalent out there is like there is going to be no other way for you to separate yourself to show you're a real person. Because like I know it's not there right now, but in due time, AI and tech will make it very hard to discern, is this an actual person talking on the phone, and is this a bot? And your ability to go out there and your willingness to go out there and look people in the eye, I think that's going to be the next gold rush in all of this stuff.
There are so very few ways to differentiate yourself in any sales role today. And at the end of the day, I provide money in trucking and transportation. You know, you can compete all day on rate and term and condition, but you can't compete when you're actually out there shaking hands.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, right? And it's the same thing on the freight brokerage side of things. There is nothing, and this always hurts people's feelings when I say this, but there is nothing I say or any broker says on a cold call that any of our prospects haven't heard 1,000 times before. And there's really no way to actually show your value until you followed up with them enough that they give you an opportunity to start moving their freight, because they've heard it all. They've literally been burnt on your sales pitch. The thing that somebody told them in the past burnt them. And they're like, so it's like you're just kind of fighting through that. But like it does bring a different level of respect when you're willing to show up. And that's something that we really rely on. I'm not as much as I should, but like I am out there if it's an active customer, we go on site, we fly out there, we meet them, we shake their hands, we try and have lunch, dinner, anything just to show like, hey, you guys, we are like actual people here. And, you know, and I feel like that's the only way I can prove to somebody how much their business means to me is when I'm sitting down there and talking with them.
Absolutely. And listen, at the end of the day, this is freight and trucking and transportation. There's no room for feelings.
Yeah, that's very
I have two feelings, and most of the time one of them's hungry.
Oh man, that is hilarious. So dude, what's going on? How is this year wrapping up from the finance side of things? What's been something that is kind of like maybe something you're experiencing for the first time in your career this year, or something, you know, to that matter?
What a great question. I mean, the great thing about where I work and what I do for a living is I get to experience new things all the time. That is part of the excitement of equipment finance, particularly in trucking. So I learn something new just about every day. I don't think there has been a year in equipment finance since I've been around where it's been so constantly average or below average. You know, it typically in freight, when you have a recession, it will come up and go down throughout the year. We've basically been at a standstill for longer than 12 months now as far as freight rates go. And so the general feeling is positive because most people agree, most economists and people in trucking agree that there's not a whole lot of room to go down. And we should start to see those rates improve as 2025 comes and the new administration comes in. Ideally, we start to see some relaxing of some of the choke points that we've seen with previous administration. And so with that, you should start to see some adjustments in the market. But it's no doubt, it's been a challenging year for a lot of folks, particularly in the small and medium truckers. They've faced a lot of uphill battles this year, and you know, it such is the case. You get that cycle every once in a while, and ideally you work with people who can help you through that.
Obviously there's been a lot of high profile bankruptcies, M&A deals and everything that have kind of came through the news here over the last couple of years. This isn't necessarily a 2024 thing. How much has that actually affected the finance side of things? And then is that making some finance companies, maybe not you guys in particular, look at their loans a little bit differently and are like, hey, how can we work with our clients to maybe adjust payment terms and everything else?
I think everyone who's listening to your show would be familiar with the few high-profile bankruptcies that have gone on this year, and there's no doubt that those things drastically change the way the lenders view their portfolios and view their new clients. Certainly, there's more to look at. You're going to dig deeper into the credits when those high-profile bankruptcies and refilings happen. But that doesn't mean that there is not money on the market to be lent. That's a common misconception that because you have Pride and Yellow and some of these other guys who have gone through some failures this year, that has nothing to do with the rest of the market outside of used equipment sales.
Yeah, and it's truckingdive.com put an article out. This was back in September, so this is a couple of months ago, and it was talking about loan woes spike for BMO transportation customers that were out there. And this kind of talks about this. And one of the things that I think has kind of kept freight rates at the bottom for an extended period of time, because like if you look at it from the overall, and again, I always like every time I talk numbers, I always like to preface that I went to public school, so take everything that I said with a grain of salt here moving forward. But when volumes have remained relatively on par from a freight volumes perspective, naturally in the supply and demand economic cycle that it comes is you do start to see some life out there. Do you think that the bottom has been prolonged due to some financial institutions maybe pausing repayment on equipment because they don't want it sitting in their lot, and their clients have said like, hey, we can't make payments, or there's been maybe some gaps in payments that have happened? Do lenders sometimes go to people, or have you heard of anything like that where we're like, hey, we don't want your shit on our lot? How do we work on this to keep you moving, to maybe keep some revenue in? Do you adjust payments at that time and stuff like that?
If my opinion on that is that there are too many economic factors to hypothesize as to the actual reasons or reason why rates are not fluctuating the way that they would in a normal market. Yes, absolutely. Lenders are working with their clients to ensure that wheels are continuing to roll and they're earning revenue. We do that all the time. If a customer comes to us and says, hey, listen, having trouble making payments, can I do an interest only for 3 months? Can I do a skip payment for a month or two, just until, things start to normalize again? And, we absolutely, as an independent lender, we have the ability to work with clients to be able to make sure that, their equipment stays with them. It's not in our best interest to collect equipment. We're not in the repo business. We're in the equipment finance business. So again, I don't want to hypothesize as to why certain things happen. All I can say is that, most lenders are working with their clients to make sure that, wheels are rolling and revenue is coming in.
Now, as a lender, do you take a proactive approach? Or, I'm just trying to think here, because like this is the first time that I've ever heard of something like that, where it's like, hey, I can maybe go back and, I don't want to say renegotiate, or I don't want to put you in a position here, James, but like if as a business owner, as a trucking owner, how many people out there don't know that they could possibly go to their lender and they choose to just like quit and file bankruptcy, as opposed to like working out with some of your creditors and stuff to be like, hey, what can we do to make this work? Like, this is what we're seeing. Do I have to come to you with like a business plan to show like, hey, here's some sales projections that we have? How would you recommend somebody possibly do that? Because like, again, man, this is the first time I've heard of that.
Okay, so step number one is being proactive. The idea being that you should reach out to your lender in advance, not in arrears. So we don't want you to hide from us and not take our calls after 2 or 3 missed payments. We want you to have the conversation and just be simple and upfront with us. when you feel that the payments are maybe not as advantageous to your business as they once were.
Yeah.
So again, proactiveness is key. A lot of the time, what we see is people dodging calls because they feel like we're a creditor rather than a partner.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we are here to work with folks to make sure wheels are turning. We can't do that if you're not taking the call.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, when you're going out there and you're looking at this is like, you know, at the end of the day, like you are a business owner, it's your name on the line. At least, you know, this is how I view things, where, you know, it is embarrassing or as a blow to my ego as it might be in that moment. I would rather go to somebody and talk about a resolution and then actually find out what my options are. Because I feel like in today's day and age, James, outside of coming to the Freight Coach podcast and listening to it, but like a lot of people go to social media or they'll Google something and then they'll see like, oh, don't do this or don't do that. And then that they end up just choosing to quit, as opposed to having a proactive conversation like, hey, when I came into this agreement, my revenues were at X. They are now at Y. How do we continue to make this work? I don't plan on quitting, but right now I can't necessarily take this financial burden much longer without closing up shop. And I feel like more people should know that, like, that should be your first course of action every single time. To James's point, instead of avoiding a lot of this stuff, take a proactive stance and be like, hey, how can we do this? Because, like, ultimately, I feel like most lenders would look at it as like, well, damn, say, you know, hypothetical example, you bought it for $100,000. If you stop paying on it, we're not even going to be able to sell the thing. So it's going to be a complete loss for the company. So why not come to the table with a proactive approach of like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing as a business owner here. Maybe talk to your lender and say, hey, have you guys ever seen anybody come out of this? Like, how do you work with it? And put together a plan. I think more people are willing to help in a lot of these situations, because it's not like anybody with half a brain cell could look out there and be like, well, you're just bad at your business because everybody else is making money. It's very prevalent out there right now that revenues are down, opportunities are down, and a lot of people are facing this uphill battle. But you need to take that proactive approach to go out here and see, because like as an owner of a company, it's your name that's on the line here, and you got to do something about it.
My feeling is that there's not, always room for ego and pride and feelings in this business. But we also have to understand that, these are people's names on these documents and it's their livelihood. We have a ton of tools at our disposal to be able to ensure that the wheels keep turning. It's not always as simple as a skip payment or doing interest-only payments. We have the ability to do refinancing. We can look at taking on unencumbered equipment and doing a cash injection based on that. Again, lots of tools at our disposal to help out folks who are in need of that during challenging times.
Yeah. So going into 2025, man, let's kind of shift into, maybe being optimistic. I'm an optimistic realist is the way that I like to go about things. Like, I hope for the best, but I also understand that if I don't put in the work, it doesn't matter what the market's doing, how things are performing. From a finance perspective, how can somebody come in? Like, what are you looking at for like interest rates and stuff like that? Obviously, you pay attention to the Fed and what they're doing out there. And then especially with the change of administration that's coming in here in January, are you guys more optimistic that like, hey, we're going to possibly see this? Or like, what data points are you seeing to kind of maybe, I know you don't like to throw out predictions all of that much, but like from an interest rate perspective, what are some key indicators you guys are watching going into the new year about this?
What I'm looking at right now is more of a psychology perspective than an economic perspective. And
really?
I think the most interesting factor that we should be looking at is the fact that Trump is so pro-business that there will inevitably be a trickle-down effect that helps out small businesses. He may be pro-large business, that's fine. Ultimately, when you're pro-large business, there is an absolute trickle-down effect that ultimately helps out small and medium-sized businesses as well. So assuming that the Fed rate continues to slowly come down, and lending prices are slightly reduced from where they are now, that should make a more competitive market for small and medium-sized trucking companies and increase their overall business volume.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be my prediction. Now, my crystal ball works the exact same way as your public school crystal ball does. We both are born and bred from the same cloth, so take it with a grain of salt. But that would be my prediction, is that Trump being so pro-business bodes well for the overall economy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and that is kind of like where my mindset is at with a lot of this is you will, at least from my perspective, you will not find a more pro-business president than Trump. You really will not out there. And to your point, yeah, if it is big business or whatever, it'll trickle down and everything else that comes with it. But I personally feel like going into 2025 with the change of administration that's coming in, I personally feel this will have a net positive effect on the freight market overall. With all of that being said, a way more positive effect than another 4 years of the current situation, right? Again, I look at real-time numbers. I try and keep my emotions out of this. But if I look at that from a dollars and cents perspective, I feel way more optimistic going into this about that. And, because I feel like ultimately, this, like lowering of interest rates and everything else that's going on out there, that bodes well as, from it. And then fuel prices going down, all of the ancillary effects that come and the after effects of what some of these things do to lower our overall cost of living that goes on out there. Because, anybody knows if it costs more to manufacture goods, that gets passed along to the consumer and everything else. And I mean, it's very well publicized at this point that the cost of living is up to, I've seen stats as high as 30% out there over the last 4 years. And if, people need to somehow, businesses are always going to look at different angles to be, how can we make our money back, right? Like nobody goes into business and expects to lose everything. Obviously people understand the ebbs and the flows of things that come along with it. But I think, going out there, and if if the feds lower the interest rate, I don't know by how much, I don't know what's the catastrophic number that they could do, because there's two sides to every coin here. But putting that motivation towards people feeling more confident in making larger purchases, whether it be more inventory purchases or maybe buying more trucks, maybe buying, feeling more confident to sign a longer lease on a warehouse or anything else that comes along with it, or buy a warehouse, whatever that looks like, that will ultimately bode well for us.
100% agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it ultimately boils down to the level of confidence that the market has in general purchases of goods and services.
Yeah, and I think, because October, an article that we were going to get to, but I don't know if we're going to have enough time. But, it was from ttnews.com, and it was talking about how used truck sales are up 10.7% year over year. And it was up almost 10% in September alone. And then the average used truck prices have dropped 13% annually. So I think that would you say with a lot of this data that's coming through, this is from an equipment sales perspective, it's more of a normalization where it's like the used truck sales are up a little bit more because now that the prices are getting back more in line with what they're worth, as opposed to the inflated prices that we had seen for the last, I don't want to say in 2024, but there was a period of inflated prices that caused a lot of panic buying out there.
Typically, when you see a drastic increase in the sale of used trucks or the purchase of used trucks, what you'll also find is the purchase and sale increase on parts and services as well, because likely what is happening is people are fixing older equipment, trying to keep older equipment on the road longer than they normally would in whatever their normal cycle is, and so ideally what happens is the price of new equipment starts to balance out, and we start to see less of a regular fluctuation in the purchase of used equipment and parts, and we start to see a balance happening. So if we're still seeing a drastic spike in January and February in the used market, I would caution that that's probably an indication that people aren't ready to buy new yet.
Mm-hmm. What would stop somebody, like I understand extending the life cycle of it, but, I've gone out there and like this was actually the first time that I've ever bought a brand new vehicle in my life was this last year. I've always bought and used, but like when it was like a 4% less interest rate on the loan. And then, the bumper to bumper warranty that comes along with it on the truck and everything. So repairs and maintenance and all of that. From an overall price perspective, I looked at it as this is the better deal overall that comes along with it. How are you out there assessing that with your clients? If I'm coming to you this year, James, and I'm seeing a lot of this data and I'm like, hey man, what's going to be my best option? Do I buy new here or do I go used and try and extend the longevity of some of these, units that maybe there was a bunch of maintenance that was done to, a couple of used trucks here. So like the life cycle of this one might be extended. How would we go through that conversation?
I mean, that's all very particular to individual fleets. And, you have to sit down with several people, including your fleet manager, your accounting department, your CFO, and discuss what your current budget looks like, what the regular maintenance schedule looks like for new equipment versus the expense of keeping older equipment on the road. It is very particular to individual fleets, not something that can be blanket statement across the entire board.
No, and I think that's, again, I wish more information and content would be out there kind of along that subject, right? Like, breaking it down from like a fleet size, what people could do, like kind of like those behind the scenes conversations, right? Because I feel like a lot of companies, as you hit those growth phases, again, like I only have experience up to a certain point, right? Like I've never been the CEO of $100 million company yet. And, so it's like, I'm trying to think ahead, and surround myself with people, maybe find those mentors and everything else. Like, weren't you at the Toronto transportation thing here recently?
Toronto Transportation Club had a gala last Thursday. Yeah.
Okay. Were you at that?
I was.
Now, is there something that's at the Toronto Transportation Club where like fleets of different sizes, from a networking perspective, where it's like, hey, go and connect with those people who, that guy who's now running a 50 or 100 truck operation, if you're at 3 to 5 trucks, to kind of build that plan out that you were discussing right there, James?
Yeah, absolutely. Those networking opportunities happen all the time. And every city, every major city should have its own transportation club. And I attend lots of different association and club events all year long. And it's fantastic when you get to actually sit down with the folks who have gone through 5 or 7 years of growth phase to see the kinds of issues that they're dealing with now versus what they were dealing with 5 or 7 years ago. Ultimately, there's a plethora of folks within the industry who come from the fleet management and accounting side who can help these folks deal with those growth issues that are not necessarily on the finance side, but more on the maintenance and growth side that are tremendously experienced on that side of the business.
Yeah. No, and I think like that's always a great first step for a lot of people, right? Because, I'm of the mindset, like I said, like I'm an optimistic realist, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, if things improve, cool, but what if they don't improve, right? But say they do improve, how are you going to handle it, right? Like I feel like you got to take stock over these last couple of years, and I'm just speaking from experience here. I made a lot of dumb financial decisions in my business because I thought revenue was just always going to be that way, right? Like I thought I had the Midas fucking touch on everything, James, and that everything was going to be great. And then reality set in. And then now, as I'm coming up on my 5th year of being in business and working for myself, I look at everything with a fine-tooth comb. Like I am constantly assessing my P&L and I'm looking at where's the money going? Where's it coming? Obviously I know where it's coming in, but like I'm breaking this down because I'm like, I don't want to be in that position. All right. I want to have financial health inside of my business just as much as I want in my personal life. And I need to attack it, but I also need to network with people who've already done those things. So I'm better prepared for this because my big fear is not that the market's going to get better. It's just that it's going to get better. And then people are not going to think that these last couple of years happened, and then they're going to be right back in this exact same position. And like after the next cycle comes through, and they're going to be sitting there with their hands up. How did this happen? What, so it's like, you really got to take this. If things improve or when they start to improve, you really, really, really got to plan and operate how it was when it was down. And then, be financially competent with a lot of your decisions going forward.
Financial literacy in any business is so important. And candidly, there's no reason why you shouldn't be looking at your balance sheet every day or at least once a week and making prudent decisions based on your own balance sheet, income statement, and the overall market.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And James, I know you got to get back out on the road here, you guys, because again, when I say I only speak with transportation professionals, I only speak with people who have day jobs, and my man James is out there hustling. So James, how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
LinkedIn or james.currier@finloc.com. Always happy to speak with your listeners, Jolly, particularly Steve Setka, who always comments on the shine from the dome. Fantastic comment.
I love it. And hey, that's going to be it for today, you guys. If you guys can't find James or Finloc or anything for some reason, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with James. If you have any finance questions about 2025, what you can do out there if you're a fleet owner and everything else, hit him up, you guys. He's here to help, all right? Even if you're not a client of his, he's always been more than willing to have conversations with people about what your finance options are with your equipment and everything else. He takes that proactive approach. That's why I love having him on the show. But that's going to be it for today, you guys. Well, besides the fact that he's ridiculously good looking, but at the end of the day, yeah, not you. We will be back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.